now for it's a couple of years now, isn't it, Kate?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I first met Kate back in oh God, again, about 3-4 years ago, possibly, when Kate was working for Specsavers.
That's right.
And it was lovely. It was a recommendation from someone else that's going to be doing one of the webinars, Satvia.
Yeah.
And Satvia is absolutely
picture funny.
That's really good.
Got the light behind. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just going to pop is it Paula on mute? There, you've got it. Yeah, super. Yeah, and Safi going to do a brilliant talk for you. And it's just been lovely to have these connections and been a real benefit. And we'll be talking about connection as we talk about the 5 ways to well-being. But back to me. And by the way, this sort of hour that you're with me, you will work out it is all about me, even for that short space of time. I'm actually a nurse by background. I trained as a general nurse in a small town in the northeast of England called Hartlepool, most famous for hanging a monkey during the Napoleonic Wars. I trained as a general nurse there, but then moved off and away from Hartlepool and trained as a mental health nurse. That was up at Newcastle, and it was fascinating because I really loved working in mental health, and I did that for more than a decade, a variety of jobs, from ward nurse, community psychiatric nurse, to dealing with people who had tried to take their own life. And I did that for 10 years before sort of shifting out of that work into education. And actually what was really interesting, because I was dealing so much with ill health, one of the things that I felt was sometimes neglected is how do we put in proactive strategies, and how do we help make ourselves more resilient? How do we learn how to cope with some of the stuff that we've got going on in our lives? So I became much more interested in that side of things. I was also, and linked to that, my last sort of job for the man, so to speak, was working for the local authority, where I was the coordinator of the drug education team, working with local authorities on substance misuse and alcohol and drug use amongst people. And against that sharp end of when we're at that problem side of things, we'll talk a smidge about activities that we might view as depleting activities along with this, because maybe, and I'm looking around at the patchwork of faces that I've got here, I'm guessing none of you have experience of wine. So this might be an alien concept to you. You might not be familiar with that. But many people will use something like a glass of wine or some beer, or maybe food, things like a trifle or some biscuits or some chocolate to help us cope. Now, these are the strategies that people use, and they can be, on the face of it, feel like they're helping, but they might in actuality be a depleting activity. So we'll look at that, we'll look at those things. So we became quite interested in this whole well-being agenda. I got made redundant from that job as the drug education team coordinator, and I desperately looked around for things to do, thinking, well, I'll be doing more, still doing drugs work. But actually the demand for mental health work and understanding mental health has improved, it's just grown massively over the 10 years I've been working as a director of Golden Tree. And what's been really interesting is when I first got made redundant, I did 2 things. One, I trained as a meditation instructor, and we're going to do a little touch of that in a moment. And the other thing that I trained as was a laughter yoga instructor as well. And I know I can't see everyone's face, but it'd be lovely if people could put the cameras on it at some point, because we're going to do a little bit of laughter yoga as well. So I'm looking forward to and I love the looks of horror and worry on people's faces as that starts. It works brilliantly on Zoom. I did this recently with a company, and their head office is in Australia. And it was brilliant because one of the guys, the managing director, was late. And when he appeared on the Zoom, he was actually upside down. And it was just brilliant because he came from Australia. And that we'll talk about finding the funny and noticing this stuff as we go through. Okay, folks, I think that's enough about me. Let's get on with this. I'm going to share my screen with you. I'll be talking for about sort of 30, 35, 40 minutes, something like that. And then we've got time for questions and things like that after that, if that's okay with people. So if I pop my screen share on so everyone can kind of see that. We're going to be talking about the 5 ways to well-being. And the 5 ways to well-being came from actually a report from the Foresight Commission, many years ago. We're probably looking over a decade ago, on what are the things that we can do within our lives that can help us maintain our sense of well-being, now both physical and mental well-being. And there's no health. I mean, I love this phrase that came from New Labour many years ago, that was no health without mental health. So it's really getting that connection between the sort of physical and mental well-being and that idea of health. I'm not going to say what the 5 ways are just yet. I just want to have a little sort of ease into this a little bit. And I want us to say hello to our breath. Because this might sound bizarre, but learning to breathe and learning to notice our breath can actually be really interesting. And it can also be a real tool to benefit ourselves throughout the day. So what I'm going to invite you to do now, just very, very briefly, is to think about your posture. Think about how you're sitting in your chair. And I would like you to kind of get a nice straight back. Imagine, if you will, you've got a cord that's running from the base of your spine right up through your back, and it's gently pulling on your head, not stretching it, but just gently pulling on your head. And I'd like your hands just to drop loosely, let them rest on your thighs, and then drop your gaze to about an angle of 45 degrees. Just dropping your gaze, not your head. Keep your head nice and straight. And if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes. If not, just let your gaze drop. Now, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath in. And when you take that deep breath in, I want you to notice where you notice it the most. Now, for some people, that can be the top of the lip, around the nostrils, the chest, or the abdomen. It will be unique to you. You'll pause at the top of that breath, and then you'll gently exhale through your mouth. And then let your breath settle to its normal rate and flow. So take that deep breath in, pausing at the top of that breath, and then release. And allow your attention to settle where you notice that breath. And begin to notice each in-breath and each out-breath. Try and follow each complete breath from its very start to the pause at the top of that breath, and then the release and the pause at the bottom of that breath. You're not trying to control your breathing in any way. You're just trying to notice and get your focused attention on that breath. Now, you might notice your mind wandering. That's okay. That's what our minds do. If you notice that happening, just bring your attention and your awareness back to where you feel that breath the most. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. And with each in-breath, you know you dwell in the present moment. And you know that moment is a wonderful moment. Just stay with your breath just for a few moments more. Breathing in and breathing out. Now take a deep breath in once more. Pausing at the top of that breath, then release through the mouth. and just do a quick notice of how you feel right now. Are you feeling still tense? Are you noticing a need to get on with the webinar? Are you noticing a sense of relaxation? I'm just going to stop the share for a moment because we've got a small group. Would anyone kind of like to make any comments? What did they notice on that? Was it easy? Was it difficult? Do any of you do meditation? If you don't want to speak out sort of to the main room, please use the chat box as well.
I don't mind speaking, Simon. I've never done anything like that before, but actually it was lovely. Just I suppose to have those few moments or minutes where it was my nose. I noticed my breath in my nose, and you really focused on that, and you're so in the moment, as you say, and so that fantastic. Thank you.
2 minutes. In fact, probably less
2 minutes.
Than 2 minutes we did that. Now, and what's
Lovely.
Really interesting is people said that I've got no time to do this. You might have been focused, you might have been dealing with a difficult customer, a difficult person. I often find that there's issues. I always used to say work was lovely, but for the people I had to work with. The relationships that we have with people can be challenging. You might put that down, and rather than just moving on straight on to the next thing, why not give yourself a moment?
Yeah.
A focused moment, and a focused moment on your breath. And there's a lovely Zen phrase. I just love this. It says, if you can't find time to meditate for 20 minutes a day, meditate for an hour. I just love that phrase, because you will, if you build this into your daily life, you will notice a difference. I now get up 20 minutes earlier than I used to and do 20 minutes of meditation each day. And I've noticed a change in how my focus is and how my energy is throughout the day. And that's something that I've been working on now for about 10 years. I do miss some mornings. I've got to say, some mornings I'm just exhausted, but I will try and build that in to my day and split it up into minute intervals. We can do this. These are simple tools. All of the stuff that I'm going to tell you about are very simple tools, but sometimes they're not easy to do. So we've got to look at how we put the effort in. Let me go back. Anyone else want to say anything about that just before?
Yeah, and I'll echo what Liz said. It's very relaxing. I'm sat in a boardroom, so I was conscious of somebody coming up to the door and thinking I was fast asleep by myself in here. But I have been in a one-to-one session with somebody and done meditation and have found it really relaxing. There's other ways as well. I dog walk in the morning, I dog walk in the evening, and that is my sort of meditation relaxation time.
Hold that thought, Carl. I'm going to come back to dog walking, because it's the constant debate in our house. Should we get a dog?
Yes.
Those things. What's really interesting is because this is one of those things that I'm not allowed to talk about, but I think it's one of those things that's better to ask for forgiveness than permission on this. We did some work with Google a few years ago on laughter yoga. And we put it all over social media that we'd done it, and then we were told that we ought not to have done that. But hey, what was really interesting though within Google is they start all of their meetings with a 5-minute meditation. And I think if companies like Google are kind of incorporating that in, there's this idea that they're all very happy clappy. What they are doing is really focusing on well-being. And they've found that meetings don't last as long because they are more focused, people's attention is there, and they crack on with the job. So there's a real benefit to these simple little tools and techniques that we can do. You're not sitting cross-legged, you're just sitting, and why not, in a boardroom, be sat upright, eyes closed, breathing, or your eyes down. Put a bit of paper in front of you so it might look like you're concentrating on that, if we're concerned about what other people think. Okay, folks, let me move on to this, because I think it's actually quite interesting that when we think about this whole well-being agenda, we need to think about what is it that we're kind of protecting ourselves from, or what are we building resilience against? And there's a brilliant model called the stress vulnerability model. that came from Brabham and Turkington. Again, this is way back in 2002 and builds on research that's looked at stress for over a century. And you can probably recognize some of the stressors that pour into your own personal stress container. Things that might kind of stress you out. And if anyone wants to type things that stress them out, just stop the share again. If anyone wants to type things that stress them out into the chat box, please do. Please don't mention people's names. Don't be kind of, yeah, Kate Painter, she really stresses me out. I don't want to do that, but there might be certain things that we could put in. I always say the two things that really stress me out, and Carl, I'm looking at you now on my thing. What really bugs me, two things really irritate me. One is people driving on the road when I am, but that seems a little bit unreasonable. The second thing is dog mess. People not clearing up the dog mess, or worse still, people putting the dog mess in a bag, hanging it on a tree.
Yeah, I can understand.
That irritates the life out, and I can feel my blood boiling when I see it. So it's like those things are being poured into my stress bucket on top of all the other day-to-day things, like deadlines, like this bit of work needs doing. I've got a request for this coming, a request for that coming. How do I fit time management, the demands and things like that? All of those things pour in to my stress container. Now, you will have the things, maybe family issues, health issues, those things pour in. Now, unless we have a safety valve, now a safety valve works really well, we'll never be able to relieve the pressure, so it will build and build and build, and that stress container just gets heavier and heavier and heavier until it spills over. And it spills over into what might be described as emotional snapping. And on this, if I may, and I know I mentioned this on the training, but you sometimes see this when people will be snappy with you. And again, small groups, I'm okay switching, I hope, from Sheen's screen share to me, so I can see people's faces. Are any of you ever snappy with people around you? Would anyone like to maybe use the reactions button or nod or put the thumbs up? Has anyone ever said that they are fine when asked if everything's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So please,
I can relate to the stress bucket as well. I've seen that before, and can really relate to it, and that valve not opening.
Yeah, and I'm just going to change the language on this idea of fine a little bit, because this is being recorded. I'm going to change what fine stands for a little bit. It's an acronym. It stands for frazzled, insecure, needy, and emotional. That's what it stands for. There is another F that I sometimes put on there, but since it's been recorded, I won't say that one. But you're frazzled, and you'll ask someone how they are, and they'll say, fine. Oh, well, there we go. There's something going on. There's something actually happening for that person. So if we go back to this, we maybe need to think about what can we do to help that safety valve relieve that pressure. Because what's actually going on in our brain, something really physical. When we are stressed, parts of the brain fire because we're feeling under threat. Stress is about this feeling of being threatened in some way. And this is very early experiences. This is very early sort of evolutionary experiences. But you can see part of that there being the amygdala. And the amygdala is there about our threat response. And sometimes we can feel that our amygdala is firing off all the time because we are tense. This sets in motion that the hypothalamus sending messages down to the adrenal glands, and we get that adrenaline, we get that fight, flight, or even freeze response. And whilst that's really useful, well, fight and flight can be really useful when we kind of, I don't know, you might be crossing the road and you suddenly hear a car coming up and you suddenly speed up, you move across the road, you dash across the road, or you see something out the corner of your eye that might be, I don't know, a rat or a snake or something, and we're already jumping out of the way to get out of that. That's a really positive response that we've got. It keeps ourselves safe. However, the amygdala can be on too much. on all the time, but it can be hypersensitive to things. And so we start to see threats all around us, and it's kind of constantly on, and we're in this state of perpetual tension. And we see that happening over and over again when we're under the cosh at work. That threat to ourself in some way, our sense of self is in some way impacted upon. And I see this actually quite a lot. One of the things that I also do is, other than being a trainer and director of Golden Tree, I'm also a psychotherapist. So I actually work in clinical practice as well now, in private practice. And I see people's response to stress impacting on many aspects of their life. And sometimes this goes back into how we learn how to cope. How do we learn how to cope with things? Now, I want to imagine that you've had the week from hell. Now, but your week from hell will be different from my week from hell, but I'm sure there are some similarities. And maybe some of you recognize that facial expression there about when you get to Friday or Saturday and you're shutting up shop and you're thinking, right, I'm going to get home and I need to do something. I need to do something. Now, this is where I would like you to use the chat box, if you would. Can you type in some of the coping strategies that you use to help you deal with that week from hell? Anything that you do it on. And Carl, I know you mentioned taking the dog for a walk. So, yeah. Kate's going right down the middle. She's using a really sensible solution there of talking to others, which is brilliant. Anyone else got? Yeah, a glass of wine. And are you using a glass of wine whilst you're having a workout? There, and in that one, yeah, family eat. Yeah, I sometimes talk about that. Eating. If I've had a rough day, I'll have the urge for a bit of chocolate, or I'll have the urge for a trifle. And I don't mean one of those little single trifles. I mean sticking my face in a big trifle. Now that's doubly bad for me because I'm diabetic. But I will still do. And Satvi is going to talk about this in one of your sessions about self-harm. Is it self-harm? Really interesting thing. I prefer to kind of think about it perhaps as a depleting activity. Some of you have written out really good sort of nourishing activities that fit into the 5 ways to well-being. But sometimes we go for those depleting activities, like sitting in front of the TV for hours, binge watching. Anyone binge watch or TV box sets and things like that during lockdown? Anyone do any of that stuff? Yeah. I'm kind of almost running out of things I want to watch on Netflix. I actually found out on the slang thing, again, it's just really interesting. Netflix and chilling apparently means something completely different these days. I just thought it meant sitting on the couch watching a show on Netflix. Apparently it means something else, but there we go. Interestingly, thinking about the things that we do. Oh gosh, we've got there, and I am sorry to hear about that, about your dog. Yeah, that is sad because we're looking at grief as well. So how do we kind of manage some of those things as well? Doing all of these things, are they depleting or are they nourishing activities? Now, one of the things I've kind of noticed is working with Sitna on the first aid for mental health training, there's an enormous amount of compassion towards other people. And this has been really fabulous to see, recognizing the distress that others experience, wanting to move towards that and wanting to help out. What's really interesting though is how much compassion towards ourselves do we show? And are we more gentle with others than we are with ourselves? And I just invite you to think about that. Do we give other people more slack perhaps than we give ourselves? So we think that we don't need time to do these things. It's for other people to do. Perhaps we need to focus on what we need to do ourselves. So can we build in to our daily lives these 5 ways to well-being? Some of the things that you already do for your week from hell are connecting with that. And that first one is about connection, is about talking to others. It's about being part of something perhaps bigger than ourselves. So we become, well, more connected with others. That's been difficult over lockdown, hasn't it? Because we're not meeting necessarily socially. That's been more of a challenge. And as we're opening up, as we're doing more, is there any anxiety there? Just invite you to think about that. I mean, I've been asked to go down to London to do a conference this month, and then down to Cardiff the next month to do something. And I'm thinking, oh, do I want to do that? Am I happy in my back room working online? Or have I got a bit of anxiety about connecting with others in that physical space? It's just something for us to, well, certainly for me, and I invite you to think about, is this impacting on you? When you come back into that space, what is it like? Having said that, over lockdown, my IT skills improved considerably using things like WhatsApp and the groups there, House Party, Zoom, Teams, so we could connect to people around us. So thinking about where are the aspects in your life where you're connecting with others, where you're able to sit down, chat, or play. I mean, I'll come back to play in a little while. Being active is actually something that's really important to do, and I could see that featuring in some of the things that you're saying in terms of some of the things that you do. I think what's important here, though, is that it says about be active. It doesn't say do exercise. Because I'm not fortunately, you can only see me from the sort of shoulders up. I'm not a fan of the exercise. You would see that from me. But I do enjoy walking. I do enjoy moving. I do enjoy being out in nature and going. We have a lovely wooded area now near to where I live, and I love sort of being in that space, connecting with that nature side of things. It's about walking. It's about being active. And how do we increase that? On my phone, I've got step counters. I've got how briskly am I moving? And I set myself targets on that. So I do at least 30 minutes brisk walking each day. I say, where am I going to fit that in? What about lunchtimes? What about having your lunch? What about going for a brief walk just around your local area? I think there's an organisation called Living Streets will actually map out walks for you near to where you work. So worth sort of checking out that so we can increase activity. Heaven forfend, what about going for a walk with one of your colleagues so you can connect and chat through what's going on, or how are you feeling, or the weather, or the TV, whatever it is. Taking notice of where we are. Now, this might link very much into things like meditation and mindfulness. I invite you to just think about, how do you eat your lunch? I mean, I know this might sound really bizarre, but how do you eat your lunch? Is it at your desk in front of your emails, working, and do you sometimes not even notice what it is that you've eaten? I had a sandwich. Well, what was that sandwich like? What flavour was it? What did you notice about that? What was the texture of the bread? Could you taste the filling? Could you describe what that filling tasted like? What tasted like chicken? What does chicken taste like? What does the sauce or whatever is on taste like? And I just invite you to bring your focused attention to what it is that you're eating. So rather than being a human doing, you become a human being. And it's a really interesting thing to think about, because we very often miss out on those things, those moments of being in the here and now and enjoying being in the here and now. You might also notice what the weather is like, what the wind is like on your skin when you go for a walk, what the ground feels like beneath your feet, starting to take notice of the sensations and the sounds around us. I thought it was a wonderful windfall for me. I often talk about windfalls. Again, during lockdown, when I would go for a walk and there wasn't so many cars on the road and it was quieter, and I became much more alert to birdsong, to the sounds around me and the birds and nature. And it was a lovely experience. And I would come back after my walk and I would feel really energized, yet calm. Well, I've got the energy to get on with the next task. And I feel really calm and serene about it. Keeping learning. When do we find out new information? What are our hobbies? What are our interests? What sparks our interest? What keeps our mental cognitive juices flowing? I love reading. I often, and again, I'm talking about me, you need to find your own thing that you would enjoy. But I love reading history books. It's a hobby of mine. I'm fascinated by history. So I will always end the day by reading something that's not associated with my work. So I'm finding something new out. And that I find really, again, energizing. It's turning that tap on that bucket that makes it feel lighter and me more able to carry it. I build these things into my daily life. And then this lovely one here, give. And this has been shown to have a huge, huge impact on people's well-being. Now, I'm just going to stop the share for a moment as I talk about give and invite you to set up where you work, maybe random acts of kindness trees. In our old office in Hartlepool, Sandra and I had a golden tree kindness tree. And we would put on that tree little leaves with a random act of kindness on it. And that could be make 3 people a cup of coffee or a beverage during the day. Knock on your neighbour's door, see if they need a few things picking up from the shops. Holding the door open for 5 people, mowing the neighbour's lawn. It could be anything. You can create that, and people will take a leaf off the tree when they came into the office and make a commitment to try and fulfill that random act of kindness. You could do something similar in each of your dealerships where people have got to do, or we invite them to do, random acts of kindness, noticing the difference that it makes. Leave a note of gratitude on someone's desk. You know, a little thank you note for that person either doing something for them or that person just being them. And it might be, that was really good focused attention that you gave in that meeting, and I really appreciated that. Little things, little moments of gratitude that we can, and strokes we can give people, impact on ourselves. Now, can I invite you to think about this? Have any of you ever been driving along and someone's waiting at the junction and you've let them out? You do that? I'm just looking for a few nods. Yeah. And they give you that little wave, and you go, oh, that was lovely. Yeah. A little wave. What does it feel like when they don't give you that wave? I can hear the clenching, the tightening of muscles as that goes on. And there'll be a sense of frustration. But going back to this mindfulness thing, there's an author called Thich Nhat Hanh, a Zen master. And he said this phrase in one of his books: everyone is on a hard path. I think he probably pinched it from Aristotle on this, but everyone has their own battles to fight. Everyone is on a hard path. That person that you've let out of that junction, you have no idea what their day's been like. So that random act of kindness can make all the difference to them. Might not notice it at that time, but they will notice it, and you will notice that you've done something good. So we're doing random acts of kindness, not for the reward that we get back, just because it's the kind thing to do. There's a whole movement out there. So again, get yourselves on Google, investigate the random acts of kindness movement and come up with things and start incorporating them into your day. And again, notice how it makes you think and feel. Some of these are very quick, instant fixes. Some might take a little bit more time as you kind of do them. And again, building them into your daily life. The other thing that's really important is humour and laughter. And I am a big fan of both finding the funny and just laughter. So there's two elements to this here. There's the physical act of laughter, and then there's the kind of cognitive aspect of humour. Now, I wonder if anyone's willing to share any of their favourite comedy shows that they like. And again, without judgment. I mean, it can be Benny Hill, it can be whomever that the people like. I'm particularly enjoying a show called The Cleaner at the moment. I don't know whether anyone's seen it. It's pretty dark humour, I've got to say. It's quite grim. It's about someone who cleans up after murders, works for the police, and they clean up the crime scenes. So it's on the face of it, it doesn't seem very, very funny, but there's some wonderfully observed bits in it, and it makes me chuckle. Does anyone else have any favourite comedy bits? Again, if you feel free to type them into the chat room if you've got something. Because
yeah, I enjoy Jack Whitehall and the Travels
Yeah.
with His Father. I always find them amusing.
Brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. And so we've got things coming through on the chat about things that we like doing. And there might be things that we can go to, because I have a few Peter Kay videos, DVDs, and I can put Peter Kay on, and there's just something about his face that makes me laugh even before. And we can building humour into our lives and noticing the comedy side of things be really beneficial in building resilience. Also, in terms of a very scientific point of view, you've got ways of reducing stress because it changes the brain chemistry. It actually helps people manage pain. A guy called Cousins did some work back in the 70s, and he found that he reduced his need for painkillers by actually having a good belly laugh. So there was the distraction around the sort of comedy side of it, and then the laughter. Now, laughing is beneficial. And one of the things that I did was laughter yoga. I mentioned this. So let's just try this. Let's just see what this is like. And if people can put the cameras on, if you're able to do that, that would be fab, just so we can see a few more faces. Because I'm going to invite you to do a few things here. First off, I'm going to invite you to just do this. So I want you to clap your hands. And as you're clapping your hands, I want you to go, ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. So can you join me in doing that, please? I can see some of you, so we're going to ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Okay, now I can see some of you already. Some of you are smiling, some of you are going, what the, I feel a little bit. But again, by that smiling, we're actually having an impact on our mood. We're actually starting to change it. Letting go of some of the, I suppose, embarrassment, some of the inhibitions that we've got around this can be really beneficial. Now, laughter yoga is about laughing for no reason. So it is just thinking about laughing because we can. We have the physical ability to laugh. Now, within laughter yoga, we put little laughter fictions in there. So I want you to imagine and do that awful thing about pretending you're having a phone call. So can you put the phone thing up on your, yeah? And I want you to imagine that it is the funniest phone call that you've ever heard. And I just want you to laugh. But when you're laughing, I want you to really laugh out loud. Let it rip. And now we end it by doing ho, 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 ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Brilliant. And now what I'd like you to do is just stretch up, stretch your arms right up. And you're breathing in as you did that, and then breathe out. And then breathe in once again, stretching up. And then as you breathe out this time, just let out a little chuckle. Right. What's lovely is I can see smiles on people's faces. So what was that like to do? Anyone just chip in? What was that like to kind of do that? Was it completely weird?
Little.
Yeah. Are you noticing how you're feeling? What's your facial Alex, because you've got a lovely smile on your face. Neil, you're smiling away as you've done that. Liz, a beautiful smile on your face. Paula, a beautiful smile on your face. Dominic, you kind of got a real sort of smile on your face. Others, I can't necessarily see. Kate, you're laughing and chuckling away as that. So what are people's thoughts on that?
Makes you happy.
Yeah. What would it be like to start your meetings with some laughter yoga? I'm just throwing this out there because it changes how we kind of start to see the world around us. It also, in that room, means that we make eye contact. So if we go back to the 5 ways to well-being, we're starting to take notice about what's actually going on within our bodies, how we're thinking, how we're feeling about certain things. We're also connecting with others. We sometimes run sort of 40, well, a laughter yoga session will normally last about 40 minutes to an hour. Now, you imagine doing that, you imagine that belly laugh as we're moving about and doing all of that stretching for an hour. That's a good workout. And this has been shown to reduce blood pressure, improve the cardiovascular system. Importantly, and this goes back to the stress response, it improves your immune system. Stress impacts on our immune system, and laughter reduces cortisol. And cortisol is one of those stress hormones that gets released. So we're reducing that. So this weird, bizarre thing that we can do, which is laughing for no reason. So the laughter is maybe fake, it turns genuine, particularly when you do it in a group. So that's just something that we can think about doing. Laughing out loud. Main time I use laughter yoga now is probably in the car when I'm driving. And I noticed a couple of years ago, particularly when I was stuck in a traffic jam. Does anyone get angry in a traffic jam? I don't know, maybe you don't. Or frustrated. I used to get really frustrated in traffic jams. Now, I'm in the traffic jam, I'll just go, and I'll laugh. And it dissipates a lot of that negative energy that I'm feeling. It sounds completely bizarre, but give it a try. It's an incredibly simple tool to use. And people will say, well, what does people think if they're looking in? Well, I could be on the phone. I could be listening to the radio. I could have heard something on the radio or an audio book or something. So give that a go. All connects to these 5 ways to well-being. It's really important that we think about doing this. Final bit, sort of before we kind of go to questions here, is just a 30-second video, and I want you to watch this, listen to the music, and then maybe give this a go. And it's interesting to see this person's face after they've done this little activity. So let me just play this. Okay. Little activity there just to kind of do that. These are fun little things that we can do. Try that thing on the door frame. It really does work. And that on your foot, I was just doing that earlier on, and it's yeah, the way that your hand and foot rotate, I don't seem to be able to do it in that opposite direction. So just try these things. These are fun. But each of the people there, they had a smile on their face. They were enjoying the activity. They were enjoying giving that a go. So back to the share and what is actually the sort of final sort of slide on this. Oh, sorry, let's just go. Hang on, move on. Oops. Is this idea of looking after your mental health is essential to trying to fit in the activities that work for you, and recognizing that self-care is not selfish. This is about doing things that are proactive to keep yourself mentally healthy, rather than a reactive approach of what I need to do once that stress has got on top of me, once this is feeling difficult. Putting this in now empties the load on that bucket, empties the weight of that bucket. It's not saying that the stressors won't flow in, but it'll make that bucket easier to carry because we've got the proactive strategies there, rather than trying to tip it out and empty it out safely when that bucket's at full capacity. Okay, folks. That's sort of run for about slightly over. Apologies for that. But does anyone have any questions on this, or any comments that they'd like to make?
Are there areas where it wouldn't be wise to engage in laughter yoga? I mean, I wouldn't want in public for people to think I was a character from the Joker film or something like that.
Yeah, I think what we can do is, a lot about its context and what you're doing. I've done actually flash mobs in town centres of laughter yoga, arranged that and done a flash mob of it. There's a brilliant bit on YouTube if you go to it, if you do laughter on the tube and laughter yoga on the tube. There's an absolutely fabulous bit about someone on a subway who's doing it. I think where we do laughter, you've got to feel comfortable with it. So I'm not suggesting that you kind of do this within the forecourt of the showroom or wherever. I haven't said that you could do it. I think it's finding a place that's comfortable for you to do it. We would run laughter yoga clubs where it feels safe, where everyone who's kind of engaging with it wants to engage in it. I wouldn't recommend laughter yoga when you're driving. Okay, because you need to focus on what you're doing. So it should be a specific time that you're doing that and engaging in that activity. So when is it safe to do it? And that's true of all activities. When is it safe to do it? And we don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, or you don't want to feel uncomfortable when you're doing it. So I think you can do it anytime, at home, in the car, in a little room. You can have a quiet chuckle to yourself. You can even do silent laughter where you're not letting any sound out. And if you just kind of do what you're actually getting from that is you are breathing out. So you are emptying your lungs. And then you take a big, deep breath in at the end of it. So there's something about breath work going on there as well. I think you had a section on yoga, didn't you, earlier in the week? Had you have someone come out to do some yoga? Yeah.
We did yoga at Derby Audi.
Excellent. Yeah. So any other questions? I mean, what are you going to do as a result of this? What are you going to pick up? And again, maybe if you want to type something in the chat box so we've got a record, make a commitment of what you're going to do as a result of finding out about some of these techniques. Even if it's putting a poster about the 5 ways to well-being up on one of the notice boards, doing something in the staff room, or the wherever you have that space, or advertising it to the public about your commitment to doing this kind of thing. Yeah, lovely. There's a really lovely thing as well to do. and it's a way of, and I was kind of thinking a little bit about this. Again, I'm not going to get political in any way on this, but I was thinking about people who are struggling at the moment, and the universal credit thing is going, and it's sort of, it makes me feel really sort of quite upset about this. And at the end of every day, you know, I end each day with thinking about something that I'm grateful for. And I actually feel quite emotional when I sort of say this, but even the weather last night was awful. Absolutely awful. And as I got into bed, I thought, oh, I've got a comfortable bed, I've got a roof over my head. I'm grateful for that. And I invite you to think about things in your day that you can be grateful for. And Sandra, who I work with, fellow director, she a couple of years ago did a gratitude jar with her family. And just as they were kind of having their evening meal, they would each write down on a little bit of paper something that they were grateful for. And they would put it in a jar. Wouldn't look at it then, they wouldn't necessarily talk about it then, but they would write something down, put it in the jar. And at the end of the year, they would open it up and they would tip all the things that they're being grateful for and just have a little look at what they've done. And it's just a beautiful activity to do, to recognize that, all right, our lives might be in a bit of chaos at the moment, but there are always things that we can be grateful for. And recognizing that. Just a little useful tool. Any other questions? I look forward to some videos from you, Liz, on doing the ho ho ha 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 thing. That would be brilliant to see. Get a laughter yoga group going.
That was wonderful, Simon. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I'll maybe see you. I've seen some of you, I think, on training that we've done. And if anyone's got any questions, you know, please do get in touch with us. If you're on Facebook, Instagram, and the such like, please find us on there and like the page, because we post. I know it's interesting stuff, but we always post some positive memes on these things, on news stories around mental health and well-being, with more of a focus, I suppose, on well-being rather than ill health. It's one of the things that we do. So if you are on those Twitter, it's all Golden Tree CIC. And if anyone's got any questions, please contact me at info@goldentreecic.co.uk. More than happy to respond to any questions about this or information on these things.
Simon, I'll be sending out this video anyway, so I'll put those links and those details in that email too, so they'll be there and accessible for everybody.
Yeah, and yes, on LinkedIn as well. Both Sandra and I are on LinkedIn, which is a fabulous format to see what else is going on in other businesses as well. And I've got to say, I think Sitner is doing a really brilliant job pushing this agenda forward. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for participating with us. It's been a wonderful week so far, and you just added to it. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.